The climb began before the sun was fully up, the kind of grey morning where the air feels heavy with promise. My pack straps dug into my shoulders, and every step on the steep switchbacks made my thighs burn. You could hear our breathing before our voices, laboured, sharp, in rhythm with the crunch of boots on loose gravel. The forest floor was slick from dew, and the smell of wet pine and earth clung to us as we trudged upward. Each bend in the trail seemed like it had to be the last, only to reveal another stretch that climbed higher and steeper. We didn't talk much, just the occasional muttered joke or a word of encouragement when one of us slowed. Sweat dripped into my eyes, stinging, and my shirt was plastered to my back. Still, there was something unspoken pulling us on, some faith that whatever lay at the top would be worth it. By the halfway point, exhaustion had set in. My calves screamed with every push forward, and I could feel blisters forming on my heels. We paused in a small clearing where the wind pushed through the trees, carrying with it the sharp scent of spruce. No one suggested turning back. We leaned on trekking poles, passed around a dented water bottle, and shared a handful of trail mix without speaking. The silence wasn't awkward, it was the kind that comes when everyone is shouldering the same burden, pushing toward the same unseen goal. I caught myself looking at the treetops above and thinking, how much farther? But I swallowed the thought, tightened the straps on my pack, and stepped forward again. The climb only grew harsher. The trail narrowed, and loose rocks skittered underfoot. We had to brace with our hands at points, hauling ourselves over ledges. The sweat turned cold against my skin when the wind shifted, but the sun had broken through now, glaring in patches between the trees. My lungs felt hollow, scraped raw with every breath, yet strangely, there was a kind of rhythm to it. Climb, breathe, push, pause. Each of us fell into that rhythm, our struggles sinking together like the parts of some old stubborn machine grinding upward. No one quit, no one complained. When the tree line finally thinned and the slope eased, it felt almost unreal. We clambered up one last rise, boots sliding on rock, and then, suddenly, there was sky. Wide, endless, blue sky stretching above us, the kind that makes you forget every ounce of pain. The summit opened in all directions, jagged peaks rolling away into the distance, valleys shadowed, and rivers flashing like silver ribbons. We dropped our packs where we stood, laughing breathlessly, arms out as if to balance against the sheer immensity of it all. The wind up there was cool, clean, sharp with altitude, and it carried every drop of sweat, every ache, right out of me. For a long time, no one spoke. We just stood there, gazing out, the exhaustion melting into something else entirely. Something bigger than relief, almost reverence. All that effort, all that grinding, misery on the trail, seemed like a small price to pay for this moment. And in that silence, shoulder to shoulder with my friends, I realised the climb was what made the view what it was. Without the struggle, without the sweat, it would have been just another landscape. But with it, it was triumph. We lingered at the top, longer than we probably should have. There's something about a summit that makes time feel different, like you've stepped outside the clock for a while. The rocks were warm, where the sun had been baking them, so we sprawled out using our packs as pillows and let the wind cool the sweat off our faces. Someone dug a crumpled sandwich out of their bag. Another passed around a dented thermos of lukewarm coffee, and we feasted like kings, crumbs in our beards, dirt on our hands, and grins we couldn't hold back. The taste of peanut butter never felt so rich, never so deserved. We laughed between bites, trading half-hearted complaints about the climb that already sounded more like jokes than struggles. After a while, we started pointing things out. That has to be the river we crossed yesterday. Look at that ridge line. It almost looks like a spine. Someone swore they saw an eagle riding the thermals, and sure enough, a dark shape circled high above, a speck against the pale blue. The world down below looked impossibly small. Tiny roads wound like pencil marks, forests stretched in waves of green, and far-off lakes caught the sun like shards of glass. All of it seemed both vast and fragile, and we sat there, quietly, letting the scale of it press down on us. The camaraderie was as much a part of the view as the mountains. Nobody said it out loud, but I think we all knew we'd remember this. The shared exhaustion, the way our breaths came ragged on the last stretch, and now the stillness of standing on top of it all together. It wasn't just a view, it was proof. Proof that we'd pushed past the urge to stop. Proof that each step, no matter how miserable, had mattered. Eventually, though, the practical voice of the mountain reminded us that what goes up must come down. The sun had crept higher, shadows shrinking, and the breeze had turned sharper. We shouldered our packs again, groaning and laughing, legs wobbly from sitting too long. Someone stretched and muttered, "Downhill's the easy part." We all knew better. Downhill doesn't break your lungs, but it'll chew up your knees and test your balance in ways the climb never did. Still, we turned toward the descent, casting one last look over the peaks before heading back into the trees. The trail down began with loose scree, where each step sent pebbles skittering. We had to brace ourselves, leaning on trekking poles, calling warnings down the line. "Loose rock, watch that step." There was no room for ego. When one of us stumbled, a hand shot out to steady them. Teamwork wasn't optional anymore, it was instinct. I remember slipping once, landing hard on one knee, the sting sharp enough to make me hiss. Before I could even shake it off, two hands grabbed my arms, hauling me upright. No words needed, just a nod, and we kept moving. By the time we reached the first patch of shade again, the magic of the summit felt far away. The mountain reminded us that beauty isn't free. You pay for it twice, once in the climb and again in the descent. But under the ache, I could still feel that high, that burn of pride that no stumble could take away. The further we descended, the more the mountain seemed determined to humble us. Gravity, once our enemy, became its own trickster, pulling us down too quickly, threatening to send us tumbling with every loose stone. My thighs trembled with the strain of slowing each step, and I could hear the quiet curses from the folks behind me as boots slid and trekking poles dug into dirt. The sweat that had cooled at the summit came back with a vengeance, dripping into my collar and stinging my sunburned neck. The trail wound through thick pines now, their shadows offering some relief, but the air hung heavy and still. Every bird call sounded sharper, every insect buzzed louder as though the forest itself was aware of our fatigue. We tried to keep spirits up with jokes, but the laughter came softer now, edged with weariness. At one point, my friend Aaron slipped and landed flat on his backside, sending a spray of gravel ahead of him. We all burst out laughing, the kind of tired laughter that comes too easily when you're half delirious. Aaron stood, brushed himself off, and bowed with mock dignity. But I could see his hands shaking from the strain. Later, it was me who caught my toe on a root and lurched forward, nearly face-planting before another hand yanked me back upright. The mountain kept handing us little tests, one after the other, as if to say, "You've earned nothing yet." Water became gold on the trail down. We rationed carefully, passing bottles back and forth, taking the smallest of sips. When we reached a trickling stream cutting across the path, we all dropped down, splashing our faces, soaking hats and filling bottles. The water was icy, shocking enough to make me gasp, but it felt like a rebirth. We lingered longer than we should have, shoes off, letting swollen feet breathe. That rest stop turned into a small campfire of conversation, stories about childhood hikes, favourite meals waiting back home, half-serious promises that we'd never climb again. We knew those promises were lies even as we said them, but rest always has to end. The trail grew steeper again, narrowing to a series of rocky switchbacks. Each turn revealed more of the valley below, green and endless, yet maddeningly far away. Our steps slowed to a crawl, and the silence stretched longer between us. You could hear the scrape of boot soles, the clatter of trekking poles, and the occasional grunt of someone catching their balance. Every muscle in my body ached by Then, shoulders raw from straps, knees throbbing with each jolt. But even in that exhaustion, there was a strange sense of unity. We weren't just hiking anymore, we were enduring together, step after stubborn step. As the sun began to dip, painting the treetops with streaks of orange, we stumbled onto a small ledge that overlooked the valley. It wasn't the summit, but it had its own kind of beauty. We stood there in the fading light, shoulders slumped, breathing ragged, and I realised something. The mountain didn't care whether we felt strong or broken. What mattered was that we kept moving, that none of us gave in to the voice whispering to quit. And in that moment, despite the blisters and the aching joints, I felt proud, not just of myself, but of all of us, still standing together against the pull of gravity and fatigue. By the time the last of the sun slipped behind the ridgeline, the trail was swallowed by shadow. The air cooled fast, carrying that damp, earthy scent of moss and pine needles, and suddenly, every sound felt louder: the snap of a twig, the rustle of leaves, even our own ragged breaths. We switched to headlamps, little cones of light bobbing ahead of us, but they only seemed to make the darkness beyond more impenetrable. The descent grew trickier in the gloom, roots like hidden traps underfoot, stones rolling loose where you least expected them. Each step became a negotiation with gravity, and more than once, someone muttered under their breath when a slip jolted their knees. Tempers flickered with the fatigue. Aaron cursed when his pack snagged on a low branch, and Sarah snapped back that he should watch where he was going. Another friend grumbled about how much farther it could possibly be. The mountain had whittled us down to raw edges, hungry, aching, irritable. For a moment, I worried the camaraderie we'd built might unravel in the dark. But then something shifted. When Sarah stumbled hard and nearly went down, Aaron caught her arm without hesitation. She mumbled a quick "thanks," and he just grinned through the sweat. The sharpness in the group softened after that. We were all too tired to carry grudges, and besides, the truth was plain. If one of us faltered badly, we'd all be in trouble. We took turns calling out hazards. "Rock on the left. Step down here. Watch the slick patch." The small warnings became a rhythm, a kind of trail language that bound us tighter than jokes had earlier in the day. It reminded me of old work crews I'd seen as a kid, sweating through the heat, trading short words that kept them moving as one. Out here, it wasn't about looking tough or keeping pride intact. It was about making sure we all got down together. At one point, we stopped to rest, packs thudding against the ground. The forest was silent except for the distant rush of water somewhere below. Stars had begun to pierce the sky, glittering sharp and cold between the black shapes of the treetops. I leaned back against a rock, legs trembling, and for a moment the fatigue fell away. There's something humbling about seeing stars after a long climb, like the mountain is reminding you that even at its summit, you're still just a speck under an endless sky. We sat there quietly, no words needed, just a circle of weary hikers lit by headlamps, breathing in sync with the night. The final push came harder than I expected. Muscles stiffened when we stood again, and every step felt like it might be the last my knees would tolerate. But then, through the trees, a faint glow appeared, our trailhead, waiting. It was almost laughable how that little patch of light made us straighten up, made us find one more ounce of strength. When we finally stepped onto level ground, boots sinking into the soft earth of the valley floor, the relief was palpable. Packs dropped, shoulders sagged, and someone let out a long, triumphant yell that echoed through the dark like a victory cry. We made camp near the base, too tired to care about anything fancy. The fire was small at first, just a few stubborn sparks coaxed into life, but once the flames caught, the glow felt like a reward. We circled close, knees bent, hands extended toward the warmth and the smell of wood smoke wrapped around us like a blanket. Dinner was nothing more than instant noodles and a few crumbled granola bars, but I swear it tasted like the finest meal I'd ever had. We ate in silence for a while, too exhausted to do more than slurp and chew, the crackle of the fire filling in for conversation. After a time, the fatigue softened, and the stories started again. Half-hearted jokes about our graceless stumbles, laughter about who whined the most on the way down, mock arguments about whose idea it had been to hike that mountain in the first place. Our faces, lit orange by the flames, looked older somehow, carved deeper by the day's struggle. Yet, there was a light in everyone's eyes, a pride that had nothing to do with bravado. It was the pride of having faced something hard, really hard, and come out the other side not just intact, but stronger for it. The night grew colder, the stars brighter, and the forest around us hushed except for the occasional crack of a branch in the distance. We leaned back, Stretched out by the fire, staring up at that infinite sky. No one needed to say it, but we all felt it. The climb, the summit, the descent, the ache in our bones, it had all meant something. The mountain hadn't given us anything we hadn't earned. That view, that triumph, it was ours because we'd fought for it step by step, blister by blister. When the fire burned low and we finally crawled into our tents, the aches didn't vanish, but they no longer felt like burdens. They felt like reminders. Each throb of muscle, each tender blister was proof of what we'd shared together. I drifted off to sleep with the faint scent of smoke in my clothes and the sound of wind in. The treetops, my mind replaying the image of that summit view one more time. Looking back now, what stays with me isn't just the sight from the top or even the exhaustion that came with it. It's the balance of both, the suffering that made the beauty brighter, the teamwork that turned hardship into story. That hike taught me that sometimes the reward isn't just what you see when you reach the summit. It's who you became on the way there and who stood beside you when you got there. And that, I think, is why we climb at all.